My name is Scott Challoner, and this is the Leaders Council podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. It is a crisp autumn morning here in the capital as you join us today, and I'm delighted to say that my guest on the programme is Ian MacCorkell, founder and consultant solicitor at MacCorkell Legal and Commercial in Lisburn, Northern Ireland. Ian, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Scott. Delighted to join you.
It's a pleasure, Ian. Now, you're a leading niche private client and commercial legal practice, essentially, in Northern Ireland. That sort of sums up the work you do, I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
That's right. The practice was formed just almost 20 years ago by myself, and our target really was to be primarily commercial, but also to look after private clients. And that very much has been what we've been doing for, as I say, almost the last 20 years.
Yeah, and you've been recognised as well for your international pro bono work. I'm aware of having worked in sort of Kosovo and Moldova over the years. So I think it's fair to say that you're very much sort of on the radar as far as that's concerned as well.
Yeah, that's been a passion of mine. One of the things that I love to see is how we can use business to impact need and poverty, especially. And so from the background of conflict in Northern Ireland, when some issues came on our radar in Kosovo after their conflict, I got involved in that for a number of years, although latterly my interest has moved to India, and I've been involved in projects in India over the last probably 4 or 5 years as well. So yeah, I love to see how we can use our business skills for good. In my case, particularly poverty and need is a real interest.
And I think that's relevant more so than ever before, isn't it? When I think it would be remiss if we didn't mention the last 18 months with the COVID situation, because that has sort of significantly, let's say, amplified the sort of social divides we see when it comes to poverty and the inequality, not just in this country, but in many others as well. Sort of operationally for you over the last couple of years then, Ian, how has it been sort of managing the business through the COVID situation?
Yeah, it's been challenging, and particularly for our circumstances, because of the background of wanting to spend a bit more of my time in the international charity type work. I had shaped the position to put together a management buyout, which we signed off in February 2020. I merrily went off on holiday for a couple of weeks to return to the start of lockdown. So it was a bit of a challenge for us that we were right on the cusp of an MBO that was due to complete on the 30th of April. And we really had to hit the pause button and say, actually, is this the right thing to be doing? Where are we? Is there a business to protect? Is there a business to pass on? And certainly for that period of time of that first lockdown, it was extremely challenging. Many clients were affected. The property market, particularly that we're quite dependent on, simply ceased. So it was a challenging time. Now, fortunately, and we're very grateful for the government support, which was important to us for a couple of critical months. But we very quickly reorientated to clients still need looked after, and perhaps even more so. And while certain sectors were paused, the need for close advice, the need to be helping businesses with crisis management was there for us. And in the end, the actual completion of our business succession transition, we simply paused it for 6 months, and that completed just over a year ago. So I have moved into more of a role of coaching the new leadership of the practice, and also working closely with our key clients. Fortunately, they see the value of me, I think, and I'm on a 10-year consultancy agreement to make sure that transition is good. But it's worth noting that, for example, for me, where I was aiming to spend more time in India, obviously and I haven't been able to get in a plane and go and do that. So the world for us has been very different from what we anticipated it would be. And I suspect that's true for many businesses, charities, and all sectors.
Yeah, of course, because not every country is in the position that we're in at the moment in being able to sort of lift social restrictions. We're seeing in many countries that there is still some form of lockdown in place, absolutely right, and it's difficult to travel around as we used to. You talked about there sort of how you sort of took a lead in kind of helping your clients as well as sort of your colleagues in-house in sort of the thick of the crisis. Obviously, without giving sort of too much away, because it is the crux of sort of your work, giving advice. How do you sort of maintain morale in the thick of a crisis, both in-house and with the people you work with? Are there any basic things you'd say that you did?
Yeah, I mean, communication is key. We did find it challenging with our team. Fortunate we had invested into our IT systems and we were able to divert to working from home fairly effectively. But our staff team certainly found it very difficult, and we're very keen to get back to working in the office. Again, fortunately, we're well spaced. We're able to do that safely and well. But it's interesting, even in the current scenario where there are questions about working from home and blended, our team, while coping with the working from home, really felt that the benefit of being together, that social interaction was very important. So yeah, we find it challenging, but lots of Teams calls and Zoom calls. Really good communication certainly was key with our staff team. I think with the clients, after that initial crisis period, we found that people were resilient. They wanted to get on with doing business. Our rationale is to be very close to our clients, become close to them and work through their issues. And interestingly, we have actually had one of the best years of the practice in the last 12 months or so. It's been pretty active. I suppose whether it's my time of life that the clients are of a similar age, but again, others like me looking to transition leadership. In some cases, we've got quite a number of business deals. Others who want to grow the business in order to achieve better scale. So quite a lot of acquisition work. And others that we come alongside in consultancy looking at that whole succession planning piece, which is, I think, is absolutely critical in terms of business leadership. So it's been, while challenging, we've actually been encouraged and have found businesses and business leaders to be remarkably resilient.
Absolutely right, and we've seen that in abundance across industry, haven't we? And obviously part of being able to display that sort of ability to pivot, I suppose, has been how industry has sort of shifted over to sort of flexible working patterns in a lot of cases. And obviously there's nothing like face-to-face, is there, Ian? But in a world now where it isn't as easy to just jump on a plane and go and do business abroad, for instance, I think there's always going to be a place somewhere for kind of hybrid working patterns in a lot of industries. I think that's almost inevitable, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think that is both in business and in the charity sector. I mean, I was traveling to India twice a year to work with the charity. I now have almost daily or weekly contact with the teams I'm working with, whether that be by WhatsApp, whether that Zoom calls and so on. And I think it has forced us to work smarter, and certainly. In terms of my clients, I mean, people have complained about Zoom and video calls. We did spend a lot of our time on the phone with clients. The fact that now video calling is robust, is good. Actually, for me, during that period, I probably did a little bit more face-to-face conversations than I might have, because we replaced telephone calls with video calls. So while lots of people were Zoom fatigued, and at times I certainly was, I feel that we made the best of the situation. And I think video calling, working smarter, hybrid working has got to be part of our future in whatever the continuing redefinition of new normal, whatever way that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be an interesting period over the next 12 months and indeed beyond that, just to see what kind of shape that new normal takes. I do want to talk about sort of inspirations as well, Ian, before we do wrap up on the podcast today, because as leaders, I mean, particularly in a time of crisis like we've seen over the last 18 months or so, people look to us for answers, people look to us for inspiration, but when you're the one that's in a leadership role, I suppose when everybody's looking to you to resolve everything, it can feel a bit lonely at the top. So where do you sort of draw your own sort of personal inspiration from, would you say?
It's an interesting question. I suppose I have to, speak personally and say both my business life and the stuff I've been involved with from a charity actually does come from a faith perspective personally. And so for me, that is important as a Christian believer. That has been hugely important. But for many people, regardless of their worldview, I think it has been a time where the things that they had confidence in were quite shaken. I mean, it really was catastrophic. I mean, I remember sitting at my desk thinking we are about to have to move here and relocate everyone. What is this going to look like? Is there going to be a business? And it does shake you to the core. For us, it was interesting in that we were in that leadership transition, and the new leadership team relied and look back and say they relied very heavily on me and my CFO because we had been through the previous 2009-10 economic crisis and that was particularly severe in Northern Ireland. So there was the benefit of having been through crisis before, that you didn't fall apart. And I think that is important, that in times where you are absolutely shaken to the core, what is happening here, trying to have that calm head and drawing from whatever resources and drawing particularly from experience, that was key. And taking the view that a lot of this is only stuff and there are more important values to be holding on to during those times. So, yeah, it's been interesting. And looking back, I have to say, we look back with a lot of thankfulness of how it is transitioned for us.
And of course, you're no stranger to a crisis, Ian, as you mentioned there. I mean, obviously overcoming the economic crisis back in the late 2010s, that was, of course, something which really shook the foundations of so many businesses and indeed banks as well. But the word on everybody's lips when it came to describing COVID was, of course, unprecedented in terms of that as a crisis. So is there anything from navigating this last 18 months that you'd say that you've sort of learned?
I think there's a lot that's been learned. I think for us, the learning is perhaps a continual layering of development. Mm-hmm. For us, our team has been key, relying on our team. And again, we take a particular view that we as business professionals, as lawyers, as business advisors, we see ourselves as part of our client teams. And I think that reliance on one another has been most critical, certainly in my, almost 40-year, 35-year business life. That not standing on your own, relying on one another, whether that be internal teams, whether that be trusted advisors, that has been absolutely key. And I think team leadership, has maybe in the past been looked at as some sort of hero leadership. I'm very much of the view that team leadership is critical, and that has been certainly all the more so in through the pandemic period. And I think something that we've got to keep learning of standing together in teams and in cooperation.
Of course. I mean, even as a leader, you're only as effective as that team that you've assembled around you, aren't you? And when we think about sort of how we're going to be moving forward into the next 12 months and beyond, because there are still a great many challenges that, of course, we have to overcome. I mean, you've mentioned already that you haven't been able to do everything that you've wanted to do in the post-COVID landscape. But say by this time in 2022, Ian, just before we finish up, what are you really sort of hoping to have achieved from a business and also a charitable perspective?
From a business perspective, I think we've got to keep building. I think we have been able to communicate to our clients that we have a combination of new leadership which is young, vibrant. They're, I would say, they're better lawyers than me. They're great folk. They see the benefit of me being with them. So certainly, we want to walk that journey of having the benefit of younger, vibrant leadership, but with the benefit of experience. Mm-hmm. So we got to keep walking that journey. For me, as part of that, that is about keeping fresh. It is about continuing to be learning, being interested, being challenged. I'm hoping on the charitable front that there is going to be the opportunity to travel again, to be face-to-face, to see the projects that I'm involved in. But I actually do look to the next 12 months with some concern. Certainly our clients are seeing considerably rising costs, and whether that be cost of materials or cost of labour. I think we've talked about an unprecedented, challenging marketplace, but I think as we look forward, while the unprecedented label will drop, I think the challenging marketplace is going to be there. Probably a higher tax landscape, maybe higher interest rates. So I think the challenges continue to be there. For us as advisors, we look at the challenges as opportunities. So we've got to try and understand them and make sure that we are coming alongside our clients and giving the absolute best advice to help them through that landscape. So excited about the future, Scott.
Yeah, plenty on your plate for sure, and I wish you all the best of luck with that mission, Ian, certainly, both from a business and a charitable perspective. And I think as we start to understand more about sort of how that ever-changing landscape is unfolding over the next couple of years or so, I'd even relish the opportunity to catch up and have you back on the programme and just see exactly what's changed since we've had this conversation today.
Thanks, Scott. I'd be delighted to join you, and thank you for reaching out to us.
It's been fantastic, Ian, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to join us on the programme today. It's been really, really enlightening having you join us just to talk about what your business has been doing, both from, as I say, that charity and that business perspective as well. And to anybody else who may be listening into this podcast and you may feel you have your own story of success and of innovation to share with us, then by all means, you can also apply to be on the show at leaderscouncil.co.uk/apply. Until next time, Ian, thank you for joining us once again. Very appreciative of your time today, and do take care and stay safe with all still going on.
Thanks, Scott, and to you and the Leadership Council team.
And to all of our listeners tuning in as well. Until next time, take care and goodbye.